So we've got a bit of an unboxing today for a new tool accessory for the table saw fence. So I've had this in back order for a few months, mainly because it just came into the UK. Got it from Woodworkers Workshop, which I think is the exclusive distributor of this. It's been out in the US for a bit longer, but as per the title of this video, we're going to show you a pretty cool setup for what is a job site portable table saw, but hopefully to make it a bit more cabinet grade, hopefully. So stay tuned, we'll unbox it and then show you another twist on it as well. So first up, we have got the actual fence itself. So we've got the Bow XT 46-inch fence. So this is the XT Xtender series. So this is just under 1.2 meters. First observation is it's very well packed, which is boring but important. If you look at the cross section of that, and it's extremely thick, robust cardboard protecting the aluminium inside. So kudos to whoever did that. Basically, we have a chunk of aluminium. So if I just show you the cross section again. So you can see pretty thick gauge aluminium and a variety of different T-track profiles. So what is this all about? If I just plonk it on here, let's move this out a bit. So you can see the current fence that you have on the table saw. Quite short, you haven't got a huge amount of support in the infeed, and outfeed you've got even less support. Now I've built on this table, I've got my router table set at the same height, so I do have a bit of outfeed support, which is useful, but you don't have much infeed support. So if you're trying to rip something through at the start, it can be a bit, you're pivoting a bit because you haven't got much fence before the blade. So with this system, we've basically got a whole new large fence that we can add on to the table saw. So we've gone, let's check the measurement. So the fence for our table saw, we've gone from just over, it was about 50 centimeters, 500 mil. And we've now, as I said, pretty much tripled it. We're now at just under tripled it. We're now at 1.2 meters. So massive improvement. So how does this actually fix in? So we've thought about this. We'll come to box number 2. So we've got on box number 2. So it comes with a set of clamps in the package that I got. I got the package set. And these are very similar to the track clamps you get from Festool and others for the guide rails. So basically this slots down into here. So one there. And on this side. And from what I've seen, 2 different ways you can then tighten this into the top here, which you don't get a huge amount of support, so we won't do that. Other option is we can clamp it to the outside here, which you just need to pinch it up a little bit, and that's actually quite tight, but this is quite thin here, it flexes a bit, so I might just pack that out with a bit of wood, but we'll see how that goes. Put the other one back here. So that is it initially just set up. That actually just shows you how quick it is to set up if you are on a job site, if you're moving it in and out. So that is now completely solid, and we've already got a massive fence. So if we're going to rip something, we've already got a nice long fence resting it, supporting it before we even start it. So really helping with the accuracy. So what else can we do with this? So box number 3, we have got some feed supports. Now this is where the system really comes into its own. What have we got here then? So, instructions. I normally read instructions. I was going to be cool and pretend that I'm not going to read these, but I do like to read instructions. We also missed a step as well, actually. I did wonder what these little caps were for. So these little standoff clips actually are meant to go, they actually slot in the underside here, and I can see what that's. Okay, so when you're using this fence, obviously if you're extending the side out, you're moving it out and you're moving it in. Now that's actually a bit tight to put back on. So what this actually is, if you look at the kind of cross section of it, it's like a little slightly ramped profile. So it basically helps. I need to now undo this. This is why you should read instructions first. So what I actually need to do is slot these four on. I'm going to put these on. Two, three, four. So if you see these in your packaging, do not throw them out, because I suspect this will mean, let's put these back on now, so we'll make sure these line up on the actual table saw where it's going to rest. So I've just spaced them out evenly so that it sits and rests on the surface of the table. Clamp that back up now. And again, you can see how quick it is to do that. So if I move this now, it's a lot easier to move on and off with that little ramp. So, next step. So these are a very cool bit of the system. So this is an extra feed support which you can have. You can buy more of these and you can put in either the in feed or the out feed. So let me just put a couple of them in. So we've got a few T-bolts that go in, and then, so work out how this goes in here. So this must then slot in like so. This is a bit faffy to do, so I don't think you really need to worry about taking this out once it's in. And then some nail bolts to lock that in. On the back, it's quite a lot. So what this does, let's put this aside for now, because I don't need two for now. So what we've got now is an in-feed support. Now I can position this anywhere along here and just lock it in. So if I'm now going to rip this in, I've now got, which is massively helping support it, I've now got triangular support here. So rather than it just pivoting on the top, I'm also catching some in-feed support quite far away from the blade, which is giving me a lot more support. So that is massively useful. I mean, if I really wanted, I could add two here, and I could, if I didn't have the router table at the back, I could also put one on the back, so I've got some outfeed support as well. So the package comes with two, but obviously you can buy more. And if you didn't buy the package, you can buy these individually. I think, I'm not sure if it's one or two, but that is hugely useful. So I've now given myself a huge amount of extra in-feed support. So that's cool feature number one. Now we're getting on to hopefully what is the exciting bit, which is how, well, so the system comes with an option. So one I already have, which is, how do you get pressure and support to feed in when you're feeding the materials? So Bow also, I'm going to take this bit out, supply their own feather boards, which I've been using here. Clamps in. Now what this can also do though, I just need to take this off the mitre guide bar. So if you look at this top T-track here, this allows featherboards to be inserted in here. So what I can then do to make sure, again, to help protect, and featherboards help protect from kickback. So I can, as you can see now, I can now set that featherboard at the depth of material, lock that in, and now as I'm feeding it through, if you come around this side so you can see it, you can now see with that featherboard in, I'm getting good pressure down on that material to help it. So that now stops pretty much any pivoting, as you can see. If I just remove that just to show you, so it is quite a big difference just with quite a simple attachment. So I highly recommend it for that. I can actually lock this fence in. So as you can see, a lot safer, so it's not going to pivot on you, and it's also helping to keep it pushed into the fence to make sure you get a nice square cut. Now that is the system as it was largely designed. Now I'm going to take this one step further though. So if you remember back to, what was the video called? The USA Tool Haul video? The aluminium I had to cut to get into the suitcase. I wanted to see if it was possible to integrate the JessEm table saw guides onto this system. So the JessEm clear cut table stock guides, as I talked about in previous videos, I've got the router version, which are massively useful, and the table saw ones are similar concept, a lot bigger, heavier duty because of the kind of sizes of timbers that you're putting in through here. But similar concept that the roller is on a 45-degree angle and it is forcing the material down but into the fence to make sure you get that perfect cut. So these are really intended to go on bigger table cabinet saws, but the challenge now is how do we get it working on this system? Because if we can, then this would be a pretty awesome system. Now it comes, as you remember, this is the thing that I cut, it comes with its own track guide, which this slots onto. Now let's slot this on. So that needs to slot onto there. Now when I ordered both of these, it wasn't really quite clear to me how compatible they were. I was hoping in a dream world that I would be able to slot this onto here, but this is the smaller size T-track, so that's a non-starter. Other problem I've also got is, if you look at this, is currently how far it is reaching down to the table. So we've got a massive gap. So as it stands, even if I could integrate it onto the top, it's not going to reach. I had a quick look in the instructions earlier. This can be undone, and this does have some extension ability on it. So first thing I'm going to do is quickly undo this and put it into the extended setting. All you need to do is basically unscrew these two bolts, and then as you can see, it's got a series of holes for you to be able to put it in different positions. For now, I'm going to put it on the vigorous setting. I've got a feeling we're going to need that. If you look at most cabinet table saws, the fence height's probably only maybe 2-3 inches. This is getting on for nearly 6, I think. So that's locked in now. So if you come around here, it's now in its fully extended position. It's still not actually quite getting it. I mean, if you were cutting a 2x4, it would maybe reach it, but the reality is it's not really reaching it. So even if I could integrate this into here, or even if I found a way to mount this bar, the track onto it, it's going to be sitting too high. So what I think we're going to have to do is somehow come up with a way to mount it attached to the fence behind, so that it's effectively sat, because there's quite a bit of clearance here before this bar goes down, so it's sat a bit further down. So stay tuned for how we're going to do that. So I've had a bit of a scratch and a think, and basically what I'm going to do is rip down a piece of 2x4 so that I can effectively bolt on a section of timber to the back of this fence, resting on the original table saw fence, so that I can mount the track on the track that was supplied. So effectively, I'm going to set the track that came with the system about here, so as low down as I can get it, something like that. And then to do that, and then I'll screw that into the piece of wood. So I somehow need to fashion a piece of wood that bolts to this, that's wide enough to fit this table saw. So I'm going to quickly cut something down size now and have a play. So this is the rough concept. It's sitting too high, but you roughly get the gist of what's going on. So if I just move the table saw so you can see a bit better there. So if you look under here, the idea though is that I want this timber to be resting on the actual original DEWALT fence, just to help give it a bit of extra support. But to do that, I basically need to notch the bit of wood around where the clamps go. So next step is now to notch the underside of this. Doesn't need to be much, so just need to kind of notch. It might be about half out, something like that. Something like that. And there might be a little nib there. So we'll do some notching and then work out what to do from there. So I've marked out where I want to cut it, and I'm going to trench this out on the miter saw. So I've got a piece of fence wood in just to make sure I get enough clearance. So I've basically got it stopped so it will only go a certain depth. So we'll do that now, times 4 slots, and then we'll do a test for it. So what have we done? So obviously, as you saw with the saw, so I've now trenched out a variety of notches and holes. So if you come here, you can see that is now notched around the clamps. And I also see these slightly smaller notches. There's a couple of little ribs on the actual fence, so just had to notch around there. So that is now resting nicely on the fence. So it's got stability there. So what I'm going to do now, this is why I had to order because I didn't have any long enough ones in stock. So handily, this is too low to use this main track here, but in this fence there's a variety of options for where you could put this clamp. So you've actually got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 slots to go down. So what I'm going to do now, I think, to actually tighten this and lock it in and to make it movable, is I'm going to use these holes and effectively have the bolts coming through like this. So I'll do one here, and one here. So what I'll do now is drill some holes all the way through, and then give that a test fit.
What's half of 26?
13.
Well done. I do actually have a new centre finder tool. I haven't actually opened that yet.
See if our bolts go in. Might need to slightly enlarge this hole, see how tight things are. Now, TBC if this is a prototype or a finished version. Often prototypes end up being left. Right, so that's got enough play, but let's see how this is now then. So, what we will need to do is, so we'll slip the bolts in first. theory, this should be able to lift on and off without having to do this every time. Alright. Okay, that's alright. So that is in, but I'm just going to loosen these holes a bit, just so things line up. But let's just give it a test fit, just so we get the idea. So this is going to clamp it to the fence. So we've got both support down on the original fence and then tight against the new fence. And that's just going to pull that nicely in. Perfect. So these bolts are too long. I might actually shorten them, might make it easier to get this on and off. Because I'd normally, as you can see, and you've seen before, this is both for my router table and table saw. So if I'm using the router table and I've got a bigger sheet, I might need to remove this fence. So that is now nice and solid. So the idea is from here, and that is absolutely rock solid, is now I've got somewhere solid to mount the track for the JessEm table stock. So this slips in here, and we've got just the right amount of clearance. So basically wanted this to be as low as I could. So this can still slide in out, so that can be slid on top out of the way. And then in actual mode, you can see now it doesn't quite touch the table, not that you need to do that because I'm not going to be cutting anything that thin, but that is as low as I can get it, and that's absolutely perfect. I mean, even if I wanted to, I could get sort of probably 4 mil there, but I wouldn't probably do anything do that small. But I think probably the smallest I normally do is 6 mil, so that's perfect for that. So that's looking good. So that nicely tightens. That just locks in position. And that's pretty much it. So I can now get this rail screwed on. Into the final assembly now. Self-centering drill bit helpful for this. That's the Festool Centratech one. Okay, that is now permanently installed in. Now, I also just quickly show you, just enlarge these holes slightly off camera. So this now, if I just loosen it slightly and just rotate this bolt, just to show you how easy this is to take out if you don't want it, is this whole thing now can just slide up and out of the way. So, and I'll show why that is helpful later as well, because this, if you've got this table saw, if you have the fence all the way up here for larger material, you have to do a slightly different setup for it. So I'll show you how it would adapt for that. I'll show you how easy it is to put back in. So quite happy with how easy that is to use. Now if you remember, I think I mentioned earlier on, and from previous video, obviously cut this in half in the suitcase to get in. So I need to try and make sure I line this up as best as possible so that this will actually slide. Now it's not actually super critical. I don't think it will only just get across. So I'll try to straddle this on both to line it up best I can. Tighten that. And obviously this step is doing this is unnecessary if you have a track that is intact. Sadly I do not. Is pretty good. So now I need to get this screw in. So that's sliding good. So I'll try to lock that in. I might just screw those last two holes there. Excellent. That is actually remarkably perfect. So there we go. That slides nice and freely. Get the other one in. And there we have it. Now, I don't think I've seen anyone with this setup yet, but to me this is looking quite an impressive setup for what is a job site table saw. So even with this in now, actually, if I put this just tuck it away in non-use and lock that off. So let's just see how easy this is now to take out. Slightly loosen. Put that across, and then this should just lift up. So while I'm doing that, I'll just actually show you the other mode for this. So also, the other thing I mentioned earlier, which I've done, if you just look in here, I did just cut a bit of timber just as a spacer while I'm clamping it to this. This was bowing a little bit too much for me, so that's made me feel more comfortable at clamping that. So let's go to table saw mode 2. I'll just show you how quickly this is to set up. So first up is to unclamp this. Now this, what I'm doing here isn't because of this fence, this is just how the table saw works. So if I now, so say we're doing a much bigger sheet of material. Obviously there's nothing to support the material here now because the table's out of the way. So with this saw, what you do, now we take these blocks of wood out. I'm just going to mark where I've put these. Do something more permanent and pen later so I can remember. Slip those out. Now this slides over like that to catch the material. And then what we do from here is similarly. Because where these rollers really come in helpful is when you have got a bigger sheet of material. So it's important they also work in this mode. So now this just clamps to the main fence. We don't need that spacer block. Now we're back to effectively where we were, and then this also works. I mean, I haven't tried it, but I'm assuming it is. There's no reason it shouldn't. Works. And there we go, we are set up. So that is the bow extender fence and the JessEm table stocks working in harmony. So just to close out the video, I'll get a piece of MDF and just show you it working. Okay, so we've now got a good sized sheet of MDF which we're going to try. We've got our in-feet support on, got a roller set up keeping it tight to the fence. I could add on a out-feet support at the end, but the router table's just catching it enough on this one. But if it was much wider, I could add another one of those green ones on the end. So, but that's already keeping it in nice and secure, which is good. So this is helping to stop kickback, it moving, accuracy, because it's making sure it's tight into the fence with the diagonal rollers. So hopefully this is the perfect setup. Do you want to turn it on for me? Green button, don't touch the blade. So the reason I just leaned over there is I haven't got my router plate in, so it was sort of catching that. But that was very easy to cut without having to worry about constantly making sure it's tight against the fence, because the rollers are doing that for me. So I think if you haven't got space for a full big thousands of pounds table saw, the combination of the rollers, you can get very accurate cross cutting. And you can also, you've got the optional in-feed, out-feed support, so I don't think you'll find a better setup for a portable job site saw. So bow extender fence and the JessEm table stocks, perfect combination in my mind. So hopefully you liked that video as I just tidy it back up again, put it back into the other position. If you like what you've seen, you can get all these items in the links below from Woodworker Workshop. I think they're the only place in the UK that stock both the bow fence and also the JessEm table clig stock guides, I think they're called. So find the links below, thoroughly recommend it. You don't have to they do two slightly smaller ones if you don't have this space. I thought for the extra money wasn't too much, it was worth getting the bigger one. And equally, these aren't cheap either, if you can't afford these, there's plenty options in here for feather boards as well, which gives you similar, but not quite the same, but similar hold down. So thoroughly recommend it. And if you like what you've seen, please subscribe. There'll be similar videos soon.